My partner attended an in-person conference a few days ago, and I realised when they got back from it that I was a little bit jealous. I haven't been to an in-person event for a long time. I have attended seminars and conferences via Zoom and Teams and other sorts of internet software, but I don't enjoy them in the same way. And that reminded me of an anecdote. Yes, today is literally just going to be me sitting in front of the camera telling you an anecdote about conferences. A long time ago, I worked doing admin work at an engineering department. And one week, the Times Higher Education Supplement ran a piece on the 10 most influential people in the particular subfield of engineering that this department specialised in. This was a regular thing that they did on a weekly basis, looking at a particular subfield and picking out the 10 most influential people in that field. And exactly one member of the department made that list. And the coffee room, for the first time and the last time I ever remember, was empty for almost the entire of the coffee break. Everybody except this one member of staff, had decided they wanted to be somewhere else. The person involved was not terribly modest about the result. So I asked this person how they thought they, and not any of their colleagues, had achieved this kind of position. And they gave me this answer. They said that when they were a young researcher at the beginning of their career, they had gotten very, very ill, life-threatening, bedridden, hospitalised ill for quite a lengthy period. And they had to give up essentially everything that wasn't directly keeping them employed. So they had to give up all of their attendance at seminars and conferences. They couldn't travel. And they said that lasted for about a year. And when they recovered and they looked back on the year that they had been this ill that they literally couldn't go to conferences, they realised that they had done more work, more research, produced more papers than they ever had in any previous year that they had ever worked. And the conclusion that this person came to, which they then applied to the rest of their career, was that conferences were a waste of time, that they were junkets, that you went to them because you liked the food and meeting up with friends and visiting exotic locales. They said they never went to another one. They had spent 30 years, and every year all of their colleagues in the department would go off for about 3 or 4 weeks a year to some faraway place where they would all meet up and, supposedly engage in an intellectual exchange with people from around the world. And they said instead they'd stayed in their office and done an extra 3 or 4 weeks of research. And cumulatively, over their career, that had made the difference between their work and everybody else's. There's a lot of truth in this story. I can see immediately the thing I enjoy about conferences is not the intellectual exchange. If I want to say something, I can come on here and do a video. If I want to understand what somebody else thinks about something, I can sit down and read a paper. I don't need to go to a conference. Conferences and seminars are supposed to give you an opportunity to kind of dry run ideas, to put something forward that somebody else can then critique and give you additional information on. But it's exceptionally rare that actually happens, and it isn't really any better at it than just sending a draft copy of your paper to some colleagues. And this isn't unusual. There are lots of things in academia that don't do their job very well. So peer review is a classic example. We know that peer review is a very bad method at actually ensuring that quality papers get published. Conferences are a bad method of allowing communication between scholars. And usually we settle for them because they are the best thing that we can do. They're bad at the job, but they're as good at the job as you can reasonably expect anything to be. Remembering this particular incident did help me understand why it was that I didn't enjoy online events in the way that I had once enjoyed in-person events. And it was the realization that the thing I was enjoying was not intellectual exchange, which is what the conference is supposed to be about, but simply meeting up with like-minded people and enjoying some free food together. For those conferences that do have free food, I have been to some that don't actually stretch that far. That does diminish the quality of the conference. Anyway, that was my thought for today. And the next time there will be something a bit more substantial in this slot. Thank you for listening.